Well, you never want to celebrate someone leaving and someone losing their job. But the news just came down that Joe Woods will no longer be the Cleveland Browns head coach. He has been relieved of his duties, and that leaves a bunch of question marks. But good thing we got John Costco, Pro Football Focus, on with us to break some of this down. We'll talk about the tenure of Joe Woods, the ups and the downs, and what ultimately did him in and got him pushed out of town in terms of what happened on the field. We'll also, in the second segment, give you some of the names that we're hearing right now. Talk about some of the names that we're hearing out there. There's a lot of noise coming around. Browns have already listed two people guaranteed, probably from this list, that they want permission to talk to. And then in the third segment, we'll go around and we'll round the horn and see which one of these guys that we are interested in and piqued our interest just in our little I guess we call our pre-podcast. We threw a lot of names out there, a lot of good ones sounded, and I will say this: they sound all better than Joe Woods. We'll come back. We'll talk to you about it, and we'll do it all on the next episode of the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd, Mr. Garrett Bush at GBush91, part of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Radio personality 92.3 The Fan, can catch G Saturday mornings, numerous occasions to catch G throughout the week, throughout the months over at 92.3 The Fan. We are your Locked On Browns hosts, joined here today by John Costco from PFF. We are going to break it down here. Obviously, the Browns 2022 season is officially ended. Already changes on the way. We're going to get to all of that. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. It is not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer for our listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/locked-on. To no one's surprise, and to his credit, the last couple of weeks, I think there was some better effort out of the defense. But we all knew where this was going. So word breaks out today. I want to say it was real early, 7:30-ish. And before, basically the big axes were dropping on, head coaches all over the NFL, came through from Tom Pelissero, I believe, had it first. The Browns have relieved Joe Woods of his duties. The status of the other defensive coaches, they're still here. Obviously, you're going to go look. You're going to find a defensive coordinator. Defensive coordinator is going to go through who's in the room, in the building, and, could be a holdover or two. Perhaps we'll see the way it goes. But the whole intention would be is if you're going to bring this gentleman in, you're going to give him his choice on the people that he wants to work with. For Joe Woods, look, 2020, and I'll just go through it, kind of short here. 2020, look, was able to play, and of course the Browns were successful, was able to play almost a bend, don't break style, but you think there were games like the Cowboys game that year where the Browns were up huge early, and it still turned out to be a nail-biter in the end. The playoff game in Pittsburgh, same thing. Browns, huge lead, and you're chewing on your nails, your nubs, your skin, whatever was left. The Browns were able to pull that one off. 2021, obviously a lot more ammunition, talent on the defensive side of the ball. And as we tried to tell everybody, it's going to take time. Defenses take time to gel. And it started off slow, but it did just that. And, you had a defense that was ranked, whatever metric you want to use, whatever site you want to use, this was a consensus overall top 10 defense in 2021. You get to 2022, started off bad, week 2, New York Jets. It just went downhill from there. The Atlanta Falcons torched them on the ground that day with all the running backs played that day for Atlanta wouldn't even make the Cleveland Browns. That's probably would have made it even worse. And then, now more and more, and this is always what happens when things go from bad to worse, you get to it. The more stink you can find. Jadeveon Clowney, week 2, calling people effing losers. Jadeveon Clowney letting well, I don't really feel like doing first and second down today. I'll just, play third down and all this type of stuff that went on. Joe Woods couldn't get control of the situation. the talent couldn't overcome this situation. And you get to the, we knew this was all coming, obviously. The Browns in the market for a new defensive coordinator and very well in the market for complete overall changes on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at the Browns defenses over the years with Joe Woods, and I think you even heck, just look at the point differential for them. So in the playoff run that they had, they scored a lot of points, but they gave up a lot of points as well. They actually finished the season -5 in the point differential. They gave up 478 while scoring 473, which kind of spelled the corner, what it was, what kind of quality of a team they were. You look at the Minnesota Vikings this year, they've given up more points than when they've scored, yet they have a 13-4 record or whatever. They very well are probably going to be, they're probably going to win their first game, lose in their second round, and they might be like a 500 team next year, because that's what they're kind of indicate. The point differential there is indicative of. Last year they had a negative point differential, and again this year they have another negative point differential for the Browns. So I think from part of that is obviously offense needs to be better, and we all know that. But like Joe Woods' teams, that they at year 3, you're expecting, hey, this team should hit the ground running. They should have all their communication issues ironed out. They didn't. They still have these busted coverages. One just happened in this past game where George Pickens ran wide open down the seam for a touchdown. And the Browns were busting a cover 3 defense that they run all the time. So I think it's for them. It's you need to have the consistent communication that players need to know exactly what their responsibilities are. And for whatever reason, that they couldn't be on the same page consistently throughout Joe Woods' tenure, and that shows up in their defensive grades, which that hasn't been good over the years. Obviously, last year was a lot better, but again, it still took half the season for them to get on the same page. And I think for a lot of Browns fans, it seems like this is a long time coming because of how poor the defense has been.
Yeah, John. I look at this move as something that had happened. I thought it should have happened a little earlier. And I needed to know all I needed to know about Joe Woods in terms of his aggressive nature or lack thereof when you let Chad Henne scramble for all those yards. It just seems as if when you're playing the Cleveland Browns, you can get whatever you wanted. If you really wanted to run the ball, there's really nothing they could do about it. If you really wanted to throw the ball when it comes push them to shove, half the first season we were talking about MAs and busted coverages where guys are running right wild in your secondary. So, and then the most damning thing is that he comes out and says, well, you know what? I must say this, we wanted to stop the run this year in the explosive plays. But when teams start running the ball on us, they seem to do it at a very high level. And yeah, we regress when it came to big plays in the run game. And I'm like, how can you even say that? Like, the fact that you're comfortable saying that is crazy to me. And I think that, we'll talk about some of the great names that's coming forward, but I just think they needed a new voice, a new leader, somebody that's going to be in there, that's going to be aggressive, that's going to send people. And John, do you think we will see someone like that moving into the second segment?
Sending more blitzes, that you're saying there?
Yeah. Aggressive.
If they're gonna hire Brian
fans,
Flores, so in Brian Flores' the last 2 years with Miami, I'm not even going to look at 2019 where they had arguably the worst roster in the NFL, and probably in NFL history, if not obviously that year. But they actually won 5 games with that roster. But in 2020 and 2021, his final 2 years in Miami, they were the highest blitz rate in the NFL at a 42.6%. They ran man defense at the highest rate in the NFL as well. So, and I was just diving into more of those numbers, and I'm not even done with looking into that, but it's going to be ultra aggressive, and you can guarantee that, because that is what he does. He blitzes and he plays man behind that blitz. And then he also is a single high defense with a lot of cover 3 on top of it. So you will see upwards of 80 to 85% of man and cover 3 looks from Brian Flores, which almost half them are going to be blitzing. So yeah, it's going to be much more aggressive from that standpoint. You can be successful either way, like you see it with the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers over the years. They've been, highly aggressive teams that blitz a lot, and they're highly successful. And you see it from an other spectrum where teams don't blitz a lot, they drop off into coverage because they can get the pressure with their front four, and those teams are successful as well. But so it's whatever. Like from a scheme standpoint, it's just like it's putting your players in the best position to succeed. And Woods consistently didn't do that, and obviously didn't have a good enough communication with his players of what he expected of them.
I'm just going to go with this before we start moving this along here. New York Jets game. Absolutely pathetic. Joe Woods, that's on you. Atlanta Falcons game. Yeah, a lot of guys were injured, but got gashed. The second Bengals game, and your secondary coach didn't do you any help when he came out 5 days later and said, well, when T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd left the game, it kind of made things more difficult for us. Okay, we know nothing's going on the defensive side of the ball in these meeting rooms anymore because there's no way that made your job harder. And, G, we talked about the Saints game. What was the one thing we said? I don't care who it is. Don't lose the game because of Taysom Hill. Who did end up losing the game most likely because of? Taysom Hill.
Taysom.
That was, I mean, if you need to know why Joe Woods got relieved of his duties today, I just gave you 4 prime examples right there. But the Browns, and as early as if they have put this information out there today, they're moving on from Joe Woods. They're active. They are active. They are on the phone with everybody already. Even an interesting one. I wonder if it was one phone call maybe between the Tennessee Titans and the Cleveland Browns where they said, hey, if I want something from you, can I maybe get something from you? We're going to get to all that. We continue here. Locked On Browns, Jeff Lloyd, G. Bush, joined by PFF's John Costco. Winter mornings are brutal. So here's my tip for tackling the day in comfort. Grab new Tommy John long wear and take it cozy and make it cozy wherever you go. When you start the year in Tommy John comfort wear, it just makes things so much easier, so much more comfortable. And most importantly, you're getting older. You get cold. Trust me, I can't stand it. Tommy John loungewear, pajamas, and underwear have dozens of comfort innovations like luxuriously soft tri-blend and micro model fabrics with 4-way stretch and no lint balls or fuzz. With over 20 million pairs sold and thousands of 5-star reviews, people love Tommy John. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers. They have fanatics. Like this Tommy John fanatic who raves, I bought 1 pair of loungewear, and after wearing them for 2 days, all the other colors are available. The only place I don't wear them is in the shower. They've sent me over a pair. They're no lie. Just soft. And again, with the flexibility of it, they're not heavy like old traditional sweatpants. They're not tight. They're in the wrong places like some of this loungewear that's available today. Plus, all Tommy John's best pair you will ever wear, or it's free guarantee. Get 20% off your first order at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. 20% off right now at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. See the site for details. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp Therapy Online. I have talked to you guys for years that me, my family, me, and my wife, we've been through a lot over the last few years. And to try to manipulate, being a good husband, being a good wife, being good parents, getting through your day-to-day, sometimes you just have to understand that too much is too much. And you have to reach out, and you've got to realize that there are people out there who can help you get through the toughest of times. Therapists are trained to help you figure out the cause of challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills, which makes therapy the closest thing to the guided tour of the complex engine called you. BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient, secure, and accessible anywhere, 100% online. Whether or not you have been in therapy personally, you need to sometimes go outside of the box, be able to try something different. That is the joy of BetterHelp. And it takes away a little of the scariness of any other type of therapy. You're doing it from home. You can do it through FaceTime. You can do it through a video chat. Everyone deserves to feel their best. BetterHelp makes it easier to get started. As the world's largest therapy service, they've matched millions of people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online. All the benefits of in-person therapy, plus it's more convenient, it's more accessible, it's more affordable. You fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist. If things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist at any time. It could be simpler. There's no waiting room, there's no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Get unstuck with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's better, HELP, help.com/lockedon.
Welcome back to the Locked On Browns podcast. Make sure you follow G Bush, me at G Bush 91, and Jeff Lloyd at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. Make sure you make Locked On Podcast your first listen of each and every day. And we want to thank everybody for subscribing throughout the year, watching all of our videos. This is a place to keep it locked because we're definitely going to have updates every single day on what's going on with the Browns.
Jay, I just want to jump in. Jay, I just want to jump in real quick before you move this along. Damar Hamilton has been released from the hospital in Cincinnati, and he is on his way home to Buffalo. So, obviously, for 1 week ago, the tragedy that the NFL felt. Look, man, God can be great. Prayer can be great. And, sometimes hoping for the absolute best. This is why you do that. Congratulations to the Buffalo Bills, Damar Hamlin and his family. Damar Hamlin is on his way home to Buffalo. Go ahead, G.
Couldn't have started that game off better, by the way, for the Bills. First play, kickoff return for a touchdown.
If I was the Patriots, I wouldn't have gotten off the bus.
The Patriots had to know they weren't winning that game, right?
They battled hard in that game.
Yeah, they did. They played well, man. But the most important thing is, he got out. He's going to be out. He's going to be able to, it looks like on his mends and making a full recovery. So that's the thing. Everybody wanted to get out of that situation. So I'm excited to hear all the great updates coming from him. We did get some updates coming from our Cleveland Browns as well too. They made a request to interview Gerard Mayo, linebacker. I believe he's out of Tennessee. We played his college ball there. Played his most of his pro career in New England with Bill Belichick as part of the inside linebackers crew. He's probably one of the guys who's running the inside linebackers room. People talk about his ability to be enthusiastic, energy levels. And they've also made a formal request to speak to the Pittsburgh Steelers in regards to Brian Flores, who was one of the top names in the league as far as defensive goes. He did have some issues embroiled in the league with the Rooney Rule and some different things that he claimed after he left the Dolphins. But by in large part, Brian Flores, as John mentioned earlier, is one of the coaches that is one of the guys who brings the most pressure. He's an aggressive coach. I also think that he's a guy that's not going to take no mess. He ain't going to take no stuff. The situation with Jadeveon Clowney, it was out of pocket. For you to, and it's so crazy. You think about it, for him to actually miss a game check and to completely forfeit it by saying what he said, you gotta feel. You gotta help, but you can't help but understand and feel like he really had an axe to grind, and he really did not see eye to eye with the general management, front office, or the head coach. Your thoughts, John?
I mean, yeah, and it's needed change, and you're talking about, being able to be in control of your defense, and part of it is like, hey, the head coach should be able to take care of this type of stuff, and it does kind of seem you just never know what is going on inside of an NFL locker room. Like, we get snippets and stuff like that, and obviously we understand it. Like, with Jadeveon Clowney coming out with what he said and all that, he says that. Like, what's been going on in his mindset, and part of the reason maybe why his performance has been pretty poor and whatnot. But like, if you had a good relationship with your players, that's part of like what you need. And understanding, hey, how can I put each and every player in their best position to succeed? Like, Flores, will do a better job than Woods did. Woods, to his credit, would figure it out midway through the season from a whole defense perspective. But you've got to be able to keep your individual players happy, and especially guys like a Jadeveon Clowney, even if he's not like the caliber of player that maybe he thinks he is. You still got to make that guy kind of happy, because he's other players in the locker room look up to that guy, and maybe are following his lead. And if he's unhappy, he's already kind of dragging the team with him to that unhappiness, and it just creates a poor culture in that locker room. So yeah, you need a good leader in that place. I don't know if Flores is going to be it. I know there's issues in Miami already with Flores. when he was the head coach. Maybe he is just better as a defensive coordinator. We've seen it that many times where, like as an example, Vic Fangio, phenomenal defensive coordinator, wasn't a great head coach.
Yep.
Dan Quinn, great defensive coordinator, not a good head coach. You see it all the time. So some guys are just better suited for that coordinator role or position coach role or what have you. And so you just never know until you put them in that position to see if they succeed or flop. But it's just the change is needed there. I think we see it from all the comments that we got from the players this year. And then it came to a head with the Jadeveon Clowney thing. And the fact that the defense just didn't perform, you talk about, especially in big moments where you needed the defense to step up. They didn't. The miscommunications and all that type of stuff. The poor run defense is not really I don't think it's a scheme thing, but like you could have put them in better position to stop the run. I think that was a player personnel issue where you have a bad defense, but there's some personnel issues that they got to work through as well. But yeah, it was just it was coming to an head.
Some other names here that we're just going to bring up. Obviously, the Browns have reached out to the Seattle Seahawks for assistant head coach Sean Desai. He's another name. And an interesting one, the Tennessee Titans and the Cleveland Browns kind of, I guess that probably made for a fun phone call. Tennessee Titans are looking to possibly interview Browns front office personnel Glenn Cook for their open vacancy at the general manager position. In turn, the Browns asked the Tennessee Titans if they had the ability to have a meeting with Jim Schwartz about their defensive coordinator position. A couple of names here that people have asked about. Jim Leonard, former Cleveland Brown, former NFL defensive back, just left the University of Wisconsin. There's nothing there that has to be put out. Jim Leonard, free agent. So we may not hear anything. We could hear something. Jim Leonard could come in and interview, and that may be the first time we hear it. So just things keep it there. Vic Fangio, also somebody who's available right now. But obviously the Browns are looking to get this, out on the road as quickly as possible and, start getting guys in here and maybe want to make the decision quick so that way they can get to the rest of their defensive staff here. We're going to get to the third segment here. Each one of us is going to kind of say our piece a little bit on names that we think would be a fit here, because there is the possibility here is if you're looking for somebody to be your defensive coordinator who maybe has head coaching experience, that could be something we are looking for here. I know a lot of people have a lot of what ifs about 2023 and what would happen. Let's not say it. We'll all go there. But we're going to get to that here. Continuing here on Locked On Browns, Garrett Bush, Jeff Lloyd, joined by John Costco. I am really geeked up by our new partner and sponsor of today's episode, the mobile game Ultimate Football GM. Have you ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. You are responsible for hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, making draft picks, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, all the ups and downs of the season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. I have a terrible team that I inherited. I've got a lot of work to do. I got a lot of oldness. I got to get younger. I got to nail a number one pick that I most likely got to probably use for an offensive tackle, as I am losing a ton of them. All things that you can experience with Ultimate GM. Locked On Browns listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On, all caps, in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps, so make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today.
Welcome back to the Locked On Browns podcast. G. Bush, John Costco, the last one of the season. Man, it seems like it's been a long season, man. I mean, especially when you're playing 17 games. It was in the summer when we started doing this. Finally down to our last game, but that's no time to rest on our laurels. We got to get right back to it. Try to find some replacements because this roster is talented. We just need the right people in place to make it jump off and do what we need to make it happen. So we take a look at the defensive coordinators, and we'll go around the room and say, which one of these guys is the guy that really piques your interest the most. We've already mentioned one guy. You may hear another guy. It was in the I think it was in it was the Orange and Brown report. They talked about a guy named Eric Washington, and the reason I'm mentioning him briefly is because Eric Washington was my defensive line coach at Ohio University. He was defensive line coach for the Chicago Bears. He's also been a defensive coordinator briefly during the time that they went to the Super Bowl. He was a defensive line coach for the Carolina Panthers. So he's right now working as a special assistant on defense to Leslie Frazier in Buffalo. So he's a name that they kind of brought up as a dark horse. And the reason I brought him up, I kind of know him well because he was my defensive line coach. But the guy that really, hits a note for me is Brian Flores, because he aligns with the way I look at football. I believe on defense, you're gonna have to be intense. You're gonna have to get to the ball with an attitude, and you're gonna have to play with a little swagger and a little speed and a little nastiness. And when it comes to that, he's gonna do that. He's one of the most heavily blitzing coaches in the game. He's going to bring them from everywhere. And if you don't know, just go back and look at the Lamar Jackson tape from 2 years ago, where everybody is on the line of scrimmage standing there, right? And at the snap of the football, Monday Night Football, guys are either dropping or coming. And this guy Lamar Jackson was just like, he had never seen anything like it. He was so confused, ended up playing a horrible game. And by the way, Jacoby Brissett was the quarterback in that game as well. So I like Brian Flores, what he's able to bring to the table, and just to be in what he does in aggressiveness, because I think they need that. John, your thoughts on who you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean, that hasn't been reported anything like that because he's a free agent, but it would be Vic Fangio would be my top choice, just because he's got a long track record of being a very successful defensive coordinator at multiple different stops. He was with the 49ers from 2011 to 2014. Believe they went to the Super Bowl, NFC Championship game multiple years. So, that's a phenomenal defense there. Obviously had great talent there, but like you can't be a good defense without good talent, but it's also a coaching thing. With the Bears for a number of years, he was phenomenal there. And then also with the Broncos, their defenses were excellent. And the issue there was the offensive perspective. But you could never complain about their defense. And you saw the carryover this year with the Broncos and how good they still were. There's a lot of carryover that comes with that, where it's like these guys got coached up by an elite level coach. They take that to their next place. They don't just lose it immediately. So that's, for me, it would be a top choice because he brings that instant credibility. He brings that instant leadership ability. And this has the track record of having a system that just works and knows how to stop the pass, also knows how to stop the run, and just makes life difficult for opposing offenses. And he can do that with not superior level talent. So, that's he's not going to be the blitz heavy type guy that, you might like. He's going to be at about a blitz at 25% rate. He's going to run a lot more zone than probably maybe people like, but his coaching and his system does work. So that's what I would be excited for.
You have a bunch of names here. And obviously this list has come together quickly. You have veterans who have worked in this league. You have guys with past head coaching experience. A guy like Gerard Mayo, this is a guy everybody's right now, DeMeco Ryans is such a hot name as a guy going from a defensive coordinator to a possible head coach. Gerard Mayo, this is the path from people I reached out today. They think his next stop is defensive coordinator before he starts to groom in. We're getting these guys who are getting involved in coaching so much younger. And, basically, they are, on a trajectory path, to a lot of success in this league. So do you look at that route? Or do you look at a guy like Jim Schwartz, who's been in the league? He has been a 3-time defensive coordinator. He has been a head coach in this league. He has been in part of a Super Bowl winning championship. There's a lot of avenues to go for here. And, for any of these guys coming here to interview, you are definitely intrigued by, well, what can I do with the other 10 guys while I'm having Myles Garrett just wreak havoc all day long? You were looking at the combination of Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, and Martin Emerson. And if you were one of these guys like Brian Flores that says, yeah, man, I like to gamble, you think you kind of have the horses to do that. So the opportunity here to succeed as defensive coordinator, yes, you're going to need help, but there are some pieces here. And I think this was probably most everybody's frustration with Joe Woods is, everything was just so contrived. And you did hear players talk about it today. Greg Newsome specifically, is when we kind of just went basic and simple is when we all played at our best. The problem is when there was so much guesswork in and overthinking and, everybody not on the same page, that led to gaffes. And, obviously, as John spoke about, Carl, George Pickens touchdown yesterday, there it was a prime example, week 18. And these things still aren't figured out. And, Pittsburgh basically got him with that one. So a lot of great names out there. Obviously, there's going to be, a lot of talk here over the next few days about the possibilities of what the Cleveland Browns can do for the defensive side of the ball. We will have covered every single step of it, and we'll see how it works out, because there is the aspect here of, are you bringing in a defensive coordinator who in turn could maybe at some point next season or maybe the season after, where if you've got to make a change at the main gig, the head coaching gig, you can basically step somebody up here who's come in and performed well. So there are a lot of thoughts here, a lot going on with your Cleveland Browns, and we will continue to be with it all week long. For John Costco, John, we always appreciate you so much. Obviously taking the time here, Black Monday, one of the biggest days in the NFL season. So I'm sure you got a ton to get to here. Make sure you're checking out at John Costco 3 on Twitter. Obviously, John and folks are still busy because now you have all this offseason stuff going on. Not to mention, still got a whole bunch of football left, and the folks at PFF will take you through all that as well. Garrett Bush, part of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, 92.3 The Fan, radio personality. Make sure you follow at GBush91, myself, at Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd, the show at Locked On Browns. Appreciate you all. We will be back soon with a lot more information. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.